The massive alien starship, Glory of Dawn, drifted through the dark edges of explored space, its sensors sweeping the endless void. Captain Reed stood on the bridge, his tall frame casting a shadow across the gleaming control panels. His species had ruled this sector for centuries, and the sight of any unfamiliar vessels always caught his attention. "Captain, we're picking up something unusual," reported First Officer Martin, her four-fingered hands dancing across the holographic display. A cluster of ships, just sitting there in empty space. Reed's antenna twitched with interest. "Show me." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a fleet of what appeared to be ancient vessels floating silently in the darkness. Their hulls were scratched and weathered, showing clear signs of extended space travel. The ships looked primitive, with visible rivets and panels that seemed almost laughably outdated by Federation standards. "How many?" Reed asked, his mandibles clicking with amusement. 27 ships in total, sir. Various sizes. Largest ones appear to be colony vessels." Martin paused, checking her readings again. "But they're old. Really old. Our initial scans suggest they've been here for at least 200 years. Reed walked closer to the screen, studying the peculiar sight. The ships were massive but crude-looking, with obvious external engines and what appeared to be basic metal plating. They were arranged in a defensive formation that might have been impressive centuries ago, but now seemed quaint and obsolete. "Life signs?" he asked, already guessing the answer. "Minimal power signatures. Nothing that suggests active life support," Martin replied. "Though there's something odd about the readings." Reed waved his hand dismissively. "Probably interference from their primitive shielding. What species are we dealing with?" The science officer, Brooks, spoke up from his station. "Human vessels, sir, based on the markings and design. They must have attempted some kind of colony mission and failed." A ripple of laughter spread across the bridge. Humans were known to the Federation, though mainly through long-range observation. They were considered a young, ambitious species that had barely mastered basic space travel. "Humans," Reed chuckled. "Out here, they must have been desperate to reach the stars. Look at those external heat sinks. And those radar dishes. They actually used radio waves for communication." The bridge crew joined in his amusement. The ships before them looked like something from a history museum, not a serious attempt at deep space colonization. "Sir," Martin suggested, "this could be valuable salvage. Even if the technology is primitive, there's a lot of raw materials there. And studying their systems might give us insight into human development." Reed nodded, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "Agreed. Contact the rest of the fleet. I want salvage crews ready within the hour. We'll strip these relics for anything useful." As orders went out across the Federation ships, more crew members gathered to look at the strange human vessels. They mocked the visible seams in the hull plating, laughed at the crude maneuvering thrusters, and made jokes about the oversized cargo bays. "Imagine thinking you could colonize space in these," one officer sneered. "They didn't even have proper quantum drives." Reed started drafting his report to Federation Command. This would make an excellent addition to their museums, examples of how far advanced species had come. Perhaps they'd even keep one ship intact as a reminder of humanity's quaint attempts at space travel. "Launch the salvage pods," he commanded. "Let's see what these ancient humans thought would help them survive out here." The Federation ships moved into position around the human fleet, their sleek forms contrasting sharply with the weathered vessels they surrounded. Salvage crews prepared their cutting tools and scanning equipment, ready to tear into what they saw as outdated human engineering. None of them noticed the faint power surge deep within the human ships. None of them saw the hidden sensors tracking their every move. And none of them realized that every mocking word, every dismissive laugh, was being carefully recorded. The trap was set, and the Federation had walked right into it. The Federation's salvage pods approached the human ships like hungry insects swarming their prey. Inside the lead pod, Technician Parker checked his cutting equipment one final time. He had stripped hundreds of derelict vessels before, but something about these human ships made his scales itch. Beginning attachment to hull section, A7, Parker reported, guiding his pod toward what appeared to be an ancient airlock. These seals look like they'll crumble if we breathe on them too hard. Captain Reed's voice crackled over the comm. Just be quick about it. I want samples from their propulsion system and computer cores within the hour. The first cutting beam struck the hull of the largest human vessel. Instead of slicing through like butter as expected, the beam scattered in a strange way. Parker frowned at his readings. Sir, something's odd here, he reported. The hull material, it's not matching any known human metallurgy. Probably just degraded from age. Reed dismissed. Try a higher setting. Deep within the human ship, automatic systems silently tracked every point of contact. In a sealed chamber at the heart of the vessel, monitoring equipment recorded rising power signatures from the Federation salvage pods. A series of preset conditions were met, one after another. Then it happened. The first pod's enhanced cutting beam triggered an immediate response. Lights that had seemed dead for centuries suddenly pulsed with life. Hidden panels throughout the hull began to shift. Sir, Martin's voice was sharp with alarm. We're detecting massive power spikes from all human vessels. Before Reed could respond, a deep rumble echoed through space. The human ships were moving. What had appeared to be decorative panels along their sides split apart, revealing rows of sealed chambers. The salvage pods scrambled to disconnect, but they were too late. Inside the flagship's sealed chamber, a cryopod hissed open. Admiral Thompson's eyes snapped open, alert and aware. 2 centuries of carefully planned sleep ended exactly as scheduled. He moved with practiced efficiency, his muscles responding perfectly thanks to advanced medical technology that had kept him ready for this moment. On the Federation bridge, chaos erupted. Multiple hull breaches detected. Brooks shouted, "The human ships, they're deploying something." Reed watched in disbelief as the ancient human vessels transformed before his eyes. The crude external plating fell away like autumn leaves, revealing sleek, deadly surfaces beneath. What they had mistaken for primitive radar dishes realigned themselves into weapon arrays. "This is impossible," he whispered. A transmission cut through all Federation frequencies. The voice was human, calm, and carried absolute authority. "This is Admiral Thompson of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have violated Protocol 7 of the Human Expansion Directive. Your actions have been recorded and witnessed. Stand down immediately." Reed's mandibles clicked in agitation. They dare threaten us. Fire warning shots. Show them what real advanced weapons can do. The Federation ships launched a barrage of energy blasts. To their shock, the beams passed harmlessly through the spaces where hull plates had fallen away, revealing sophisticated energy absorption systems beneath. "Sir," Martin's voice shook, "I'm detecting more power signatures. The cargo bays, they're not cargo bays at all. They're hangar doors." The massive doors that the Federation had mocked as oversized and primitive began to open. From within each human ship, smaller craft emerged, sleek, deadly, and unmistakably advanced. Admiral Thompson's voice came through again. "Your species was tested. Your response to finding what you believe to be a weaker civilization has been noted. You have failed this test in every possible way." Reed stared at his viewscreen in horror as more hidden weapons emerged from the human fleet. Everything they had mocked as primitive was transforming into technology beyond their understanding. The trap had not just been sprung, it had been sprung perfectly, and the Federation fleet was completely surrounded. Admiral Thompson stood in the command center of the human flagship, watching as more crew members emerged from their cryo chambers. 200 years of sleep had not dulled their readiness. Every man and woman moved with purpose, taking their stations with practiced ease. "Status report," he ordered, his voice clear and strong. Lieutenant Wilson looked up from her console, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls that had been hidden beneath fake plastic panels. "All ships reporting successful awakening sequences, sir. Combat systems are at 98% efficiency. The enemy fleet remains in optimal containment position. Through the view screens, they could see the Federation ships frozen in confusion. Their salvage pods hung uselessly in space, now looking like tiny insects caught in a spider's web. "Play back their transmissions from the past hour," Thompson commanded. The room filled with the aliens' mocking laughter and dismissive comments about human technology. "They really thought those were radar dishes," someone chuckled. Thompson allowed himself a small smile. 2 centuries of waiting, just to hear what they'd say when they found us. "Computer, begin Phase 3. Across the human fleet, the transformation continued. What the Federation had thought were clumsy external engines split apart to reveal advanced propulsion systems. The primitive metal plating that had weathered 200 years of space exposure dissolved completely, showcasing the true hull beneath, a seamless dark material that seemed to drink in light. On the Federation flagship, Captain Reed was trying desperately to maintain control. "Launch all fighters," he screamed. "Target their weapon systems." "Sir," Martin protested, "our scans can't lock onto anything. The hulls are changing too fast." Federation fighters poured from their hangars, only to find themselves confronted by human interceptors that seemed to appear from nowhere. What had looked like ancient maintenance hatches all over the human ships had concealed launch tubes for hundreds of smaller craft. "This is impossible," Brooks whispered, watching his sensor displays go crazy. "Their power readings, they're off the scale." Thompson's voice echoed through all channels again. "To demonstrate our capabilities, we will now disable your primary weapons. Please note that we could have done this at any time." A series of precise energy pulses shot from the human fleet. Each one struck a Federation ship's main weapon array with surgical accuracy. Alarms blared across the alien vessels as their most powerful weapons went dark. "How?" Reed demanded. "How did they target so perfectly?" "Sir," Martin's voice was barely a whisper. "Those pulses, they came from the things we thought were rivets on their hulls. Each one is actually a precision weapon system." The transformation of the human fleet reached its final stage. The last remnants of their ancient disguise fell away, revealing ships that looked like they had been built yesterday. Their true forms were sleek and deadly, with technology that made the Federation's most advanced systems look like children's toys. "All ships, Combat Formation Delta," Thompson ordered. The human fleet moved in perfect synchronization, their true engines humming with power that had waited centuries to be unleashed. Lieutenant Wilson turned to her admiral. "Sir, Federation ships are attempting to power up their secondary weapons. Should we disable those as well?" Thompson shook his head. "Let them try. It's important they understand exactly how outmatched they are." On the Federation bridge, Reed watched in horror as the human fleet demonstrated maneuvers that should have been impossible. Every system his species had mocked as primitive was revealing itself to be part of an elaborate deception. The oversized cargo bays now bristled with weapon ports. The crude communication arrays pulsed with energy forms their sensors couldn't even classify. "Orders, sir?" Martin asked, her voice trembling. Before Reed could answer, every light on his ship went dark. In the sudden blackness, he realized a terrible truth. They hadn't found an ancient human fleet at all. The humans had been waiting for them. In the darkness of his powerless bridge, Captain Reed felt true fear for the first time in his military career. The backup systems kicked in, bathing the command center in dim red light. Through the view screens, he could see his mighty Federation fleet scattered like leaves before a storm. "Get us out of here," he ordered. "Emergency jump sequences. Now." "Sir," Brooks replied, his claws shaking on the controls. "Our jump drives aren't responding." "Nothing's responding." A new voice cut through their communications, younger than Admiral Thompson's, but equally confident. "This is Lieutenant Walker of the Earth Defense Fleet. We've temporarily disabled your engines. Please maintain your current position." On the human flagship, Walker stood at the tactical station, his hands moving across controls that had waited 2 centuries for this moment. Holographic displays showed every Federation ship highlighted in red, their weaknesses mapped out in perfect detail. All ships are marked and tracked, Admiral Walker reported. Their shield frequencies have been analyzed. We can penetrate their defenses at will. Thompson nodded. Begin the demonstration. Remember, we want them scared, not destroyed. The human fleet moved with terrifying precision. Each ship picked a Federation target and executed a series of maneuvers that should have been impossible for vessels their size. The Federation crews watched in horror as the humans demonstrated complete mastery of space combat. Look at their faces, Wilson said, monitoring the Federation bridge feeds. They still can't believe those primitive engines are outmaneuvering their best ships. Walker allowed himself a small grin. Shall we show them what else those engines can do, sir? Thompson gave the signal. The human ships suddenly accelerated, their advanced drive systems creating patterns of light that looked like dancing stars. They wove between the Federation vessels with impossible grace, each pass demonstrating a new level of technological superiority. Sir, Martin screamed on the Federation bridge. They're toying with us. These maneuvers, they're writing words in space. Reed looked out in dismay. The human ships were indeed using their flight paths to spell out messages in Federation standard language. Surrender glowed briefly in their wake, followed by, you can know to win. The Federation's secondary weapons finally came online. Reed gave the order to fire without hesitation. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes shot toward the human fleet. Walker's voice came through again. Now we'll demonstrate our shield technology. Pay close attention. The Federation weapons struck the human ships directly and simply vanished. No explosions, no shield flares, not even a ripple of impact. The attacks disappeared as if they had never existed. Impossible, Brooks shouted. Sir, the energy readings, they're not blocking our weapons. They're absorbing them, converting them directly to power. Thompson's voice returned to all channels. Your weapons are now powering our shields. Would you like to continue firing? We could use the extra energy. Reed slumped in his command chair. Everything they had mocked. The oversized hull sections they thought were poor design. The exposed power conduits they had laughed at, even the primitive sensor arrays, had been part of the most elaborate military deception in history. Status report, he whispered. Martin's voice shook as she replied. We're completely surrounded. Our main weapons are disabled. Our engines are locked down. Our secondary weapons are just making them stronger. And sir, we still can't scan their inner hulls. We have no idea what other weapons they're hiding. The human ships completed another series of perfect maneuvers, forming a spherical formation around the Federation fleet. Each vessel now pointed directly at a Federation ship, their true weapon ports glowing with power. Walker looked at his admiral. Formation complete, sir. All ships report ready for final demonstration. Thompson stood, straightening his uniform. Prepare to show them exactly why humanity developed these ships. It's time they learned why we don't tolerate bullies in our galaxy. Admiral Thompson stood before the main view screen, watching the Federation fleet hang helplessly in space. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, monitoring every twitch and power fluctuation from their captured prey. Open a channel to all Federation ships, he ordered. It's time they learned the truth. The screen filled with Captain Reed's face, mandibles twitching nervously. Similar screens showed the commanders of other Federation vessels, all watching with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Gentlemen, Thompson began, you're probably wondering why we went to such elaborate lengths to appear primitive and vulnerable. Let me explain. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing hundreds of worlds scattered across Federation space. For the past 200 years, we've been watching your civilization. We've seen how you treat developing species, how you mock their achievements, how you harvest their resources when you think they're too weak to fight back. Reed's antenna drooped. That's not. We don't. Computer, Thompson interrupted. Play incident file 47. The display changed, showing Federation ships stripping resources from a young civilization's colony world. The aliens there had barely mastered spaceflight, their defenses pathetic against Federation technology. This happened 30 years ago, Thompson continued. We watched, we recorded, we waited, just as we've recorded everything you've said and done since finding our fleet. Lieutenant Walker stepped forward, holding up a data crystal. Your mockery of what you thought was our best technology has been particularly enlightening. Your crew seemed to find our primitive design quite amusing. On the Federation ships, crew members looked away in shame, remembering their laughter at the humans' apparent technological backwardness. But sir, Martin's voice came through, desperate to understand. Why wait, if you had this technology all along? Because, Thompson replied, we needed to know what you would do when you thought you held all the power. When you found what appeared to be a weaker species' abandoned fleet, did you attempt peaceful contact? Did you show respect for what you thought were relics of our history? The silence from the Federation commanders was damning. Instead, Thompson continued, you immediately planned to strip our ships for parts. You laughed at what you thought were our best efforts to reach the stars. You showed us exactly who you are, and proved why we needed to act. Walker's tactical display suddenly lit up with new signals. Sir, the rest of the fleet is in position. Throughout Federation space, hundreds of other human ships dropped their camouflage. They had been hiding near Federation worlds, staging areas, and military bases, all disguised as space debris, abandoned stations, or primitive vessels. On his bridge, Reed watched in horror as the tactical display showed human ships appearing everywhere. How many? He whispered. We have 543 ships in your territory, Thompson answered. All of them waited, hidden, watching. All of them carry the same technology you just failed to understand. Your entire Federation has been under surveillance for 2 centuries. The Federation crews watched in stunned silence as their long-range sensors confirmed the truth. Human vessels were everywhere, their disguises falling away to reveal the same advanced technology that had just humiliated their fleet. Commander, a Federation officer called out on one of the screens, our crew is requesting permission to separate from command structure. They want to surrender independently. Reed saw more of his officers nodding in agreement. The Federation's arrogance had led them into the perfect trap, and now their entire civilization was at humanity's mercy. Thompson's voice softened slightly. Your civilization isn't being destroyed today, Captain Reed, but it is being changed. Humanity has appointed itself guardian of developing species in this sector of space. Your Federation will accept new protocols for contacting emerging civilizations, or it will cease to exist as a political entity. The message was clear. The Federation's days of bullying younger species were over. Humanity had hidden in plain sight, building a web of protection around countless developing worlds. And now the trap was complete. The bridge of the human flagship had fallen silent. Admiral Thompson stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the Federation ships through the viewscreen. Centuries of planning had led to this moment. Lieutenant Walker, he said quietly, prepare the broadcast. All frequencies, all languages. Walker nodded, his fingers moving across the control panel. Ready, sir. The translation matrix is active. Every species in Federation space will receive this in their native tongue. Thompson took a deep breath. This speech had been written and refined over generations, each word carefully chosen. He began. To all citizens of the Federation, this is Admiral Thompson of the Earth Defense Fleet. What you are about to hear will change the fundamental structure of our galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings of all species gathered around communication devices. The Federation's emergency channels had never carried a signal this powerful. 200 years ago, humanity made a choice. When we first detected Federation signals, we saw 2 paths before us. We could announce ourselves and join your civilization as equals, or we could wait, watch, and learn the truth about how you treat those you consider beneath you. In the Federation fleet, Captain Reed watched his crew's reactions. Some showed shame, others fear, but all understood the weight of this moment. "We hid our true capabilities," Thompson continued. "We disguised our ships as derelicts and our colonies as abandoned outposts. We watched as you encountered dozens of emerging civilizations, and we recorded everything." The broadcast displayed images from Federation archives, countless instances of technological theft, resource exploitation, and cultural destruction. Each image was paired with footage from hidden human cameras, showing the Federation's actions from new angles. Your leaders called it guidance. Your captains called it harvesting. But we call it what it truly is: theft, bullying, the strong preying on the weak. Thompson's voice carried no anger, only certainty. "This ends today." Lieutenant Wilson reported from her station. "Sir, we're detecting massive viewership across Federation space. Even their military channels have been overridden." Thompson nodded and continued. "As we speak, human ships are appearing throughout your territory. They've always been there, watching. Now they reveal themselves not as conquerors, but as guardians." The display showed human vessels dropping their disguises near Federation worlds, installations, and fleet bases. Ships that had been thought to be space junk, abandoned stations, and primitive trading vessels were transforming into advanced warships. "Your civilization will not be destroyed. Your worlds will not be occupied. Instead, you will be given a choice." Thompson paused, letting the tension build. "You can join us in protecting developing species, helping them grow at their own pace, or you can cease to exist as a political entity." On the Federation command ship, Martin turned to Reed. "Sir, incoming reports. Our outer colonies are already pledging to accept human oversight. They're abandoning the Federation Council." Thompson's voice grew stronger. "To those Federation citizens who have always opposed the exploitation of younger species, your time has come. Step forward. Help us build a better galaxy. To those who profited from the theft of others' futures, your time is over." Walker's console lit up with new signals. "Sir, we're receiving thousands of messages. Federation ships, colony." 1 month after humanity's revelation, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Grand Hall of the former Federation Council now hosted representatives from 100 species. Some were former Federation members, others were from the developing civilizations that humanity had protected in secret. Admiral Thompson stood at the central podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. The chamber had been redesigned, removing the old hierarchy of elevated seats. Now all representatives sat at the same level, a simple change that spoke volumes. "The final reports are in," he announced. 97% of Federation worlds have accepted the new protocols for interstellar conduct. The transition has been faster and smoother than we dared hope." In the audience, former Captain Reed sat quietly. His trial for crimes against developing species had ended in an unexpected way. He had been assigned to work with the very civilizations he once mocked, helping them rebuild what the Federation had taken. "Our first task," Thompson continued, "is restoration. Every developing world that lost resources or technology to Federation harvesting will receive compensation. Not as charity, but as repayment of a debt." Lieutenant Walker, now promoted to commander, managed the holographic display showing hundreds of worlds. Each one glowed brighter as he highlighted the restoration projects already underway. The Federation's greatest mistake